we all think back to, Outkast and, Dre saying, in New York City, like, man, from the South we got something to say. And here we are 20 years later, and Atlanta hip hop, is pretty much dominating all radio, everywhere. And to walk through these halls and to see, how much of an influence and impact that Patchwerk, has had on this culture, I mean, it speaks volume.
I used to deal with Bob back in the day, and everybody used to be talking about this studio that, that was, a lot ahead of its time for what we were doing back then.
Patchwerk was the spot. Patchwerk to the music, to hip hop was kind of like world star before social media. It was like if you was in music, if you was in hip hop and you wanted to do a dope project and you wanted everybody to know that you were serious about your music, you had to come to Patchwerk.
In Atlanta, you had Doppler, which was already a commercial studio, so it was just pay your money and you come in. You had your boss town, you had this and that, but to see someone now trying to cater and trying to make a point to work with us was really good.
Patchwerk started out, it started out really simultaneously. I mean, Bob always had the idea that he wanted the studio, but the studio just was in his basement. And the idea of the studio was more for the artists, for Patchwerk's artists. It was going to be open to the public, but the idea was for the artists. So like I said, we officially opened in '95, but we was flying Raz and Voodoo and Mean Green out here to record because Bob wanted to be a producer. So that was the idea. Bob thought he was going to be able to, win a Grammy or something, making some music. But of course, Bob can't hear in one ear, and he can't see in one eye. So that ain't going too well. So we had to hire some real engineers, and we had to sell some studio time, had to pay the bills.
I think Patchwerk, first of all, it started at the right time. It was the studio that was born to the generation of new Atlanta music artists and producers. So all of the artists that were coming through a lot of really classic artists were coming through here. So if you think about 20 years ago, Outkast was recording here. So we were making classic records 20 years ago, and they're still here. So why wouldn't the place that we did them in be here? And I think Atlanta's a good place where it's a place where people are loyal, in a way that if they find a place where they're comfortable, they will post. Like, comfort, it comes first when you're trying to make music. You got to be in a place where you feel comfortable enough to be honest enough to say some of the shit that you say to make these records work. And, Patchwerk has that feeling in it. Like, it's velvet. Like, come on.
We came to get the top night sound, and dealing with like early '90s music, mid '90s, and millennium, the sound quality was the best that you can get out of this region. Period. Unlike what's going on now, as far as sound, but really Patchwerk really gave us that. It gave us that quality, and I love that because you can't get that too many places. We didn't have to fly to California. We didn't have to fly up to New York. We were right down the street, right off of, north side. So that was dope, real tight. So many things that has happened here as far as people really connecting here. I mean, to me, it's like Starbucks, especially of hip hop music.
And when you look at the layout of the building, like you're going to run into somebody, whether it's, you're in the kitchen, in the lobby, leaving the bathroom, like when you just look at the way this building is made, like it's designed for you to, meet somebody. I don't even know if they meant to do it like that, because a lot of studios, you can go somewhere and be ducked off forever and not see a soul. But here, like you're going to see somebody. So I mean, like the networking here, I can imagine it being, like A1. I mean, I'm pretty sure that there's guys that have met here that, didn't run into each other at video shoots, music conferences, award shows, or anything like that. And plus, when you run into somebody here, I mean, unless you just rude as hell, like you're gonna sit and talk to them about something for a little bit. You're not just gonna walk past them like you don't see them, because I mean, this is a building where, if you're in here, you're obviously doing something important, or you're doing something right, or you're doing something relevant.
Patchwerk to me in Atlanta has become the studio that if you're in Atlanta, you have to record at. Like it's like a rite of passage. You know, man. You know, you see the younger artists there. A lot of other studios, when they finally get a chance in their minds to be able to record at Patchwerk, it's like, man, I'm at Patchwerk. Like, that's like a badge. You know, in New York for years it was a hit factory. Like you were recording in New York until you were at the hit factory. You know, so in Atlanta, like you almost not a serious artist until you can feel like you can record at Patchwerk. Patchwerk is that space.
It wasn't like Platinum House, which was a club at the time where all these girls were hanging out and all these people who were balling and trying to see who could spend more money. It was just these artists. And, you know, at that time there was a guy named Jazzy Faye, and Jazzy Faye had just gotten here from Memphis. And he would come hang out. And it was funny because right after he came and hang out, every artist he'd hang out with, you know, where he talked to about beats and music, he'd end up producing something for him. And, you know, there was other guys who would hang out in the room and they'd end up writing something for somebody else, or Green would end up popping up on their record, or, you know, later on I lived next door to the guy who was a lawyer for UGK's, and Pimp C was just an amazing regular guy, and he would come through there. You know, he would just roll up in his car and come up through Patchwerk. And I don't know if anything even exists like that at that time. I mean, it was really a unique time for Atlanta because, you know, Greg Street had just gotten here, and V103 was a huge urban station. At that time, they called it day parting. They would only play hip hop starting at like 6 or 7 o'clock. So between 6 or 7 o'clock and the Quiet Storm, that was your hip hop, unless you were listening to college radio. And then this other station comes into town, and they're playing all hip hop and all urban remixes, and that was Hot 97.5, and that's who I was working for. And this guy who's a legend, Street, comes in, and it's one man versus an entire radio station. And then this new studio comes up, and it's recording all this incredible hip hop, and it's the first place that people can really hang out. And it's not a house, but you know, you have an incredible quality of sound coming out of it.
When you ain't got nothing to do, sometimes you might even pass by, even though, you know, of course, it's still a professional environment. But, you know, I was always able to come through, and I used to come to the front desk and be like, okay, like if I ain't had nothing to do, like, who up in there? Who's here? Oh, yeah, you know, that's my boy, right? All right, so I go back there. Next thing you know, I'm in there till 4 a.m. You know what I'm saying? So it wasn't like, it's not like, you know, a lot of those smug studios in LA or in New York where, no, it's closed session. Well, how do you know? You don't really know, do you? You don't really know that it's a closed session because that ain't how it really goes in the music business. It doesn't go like that. It's a network. It's a network. So I think Patchwerk really thrived and made the money that they made and all the relationships they made because they treated it like a network.
I think what's cool about it with Patchwerk, it's like a controlled nexus is the word you use. You know, there's ways you do it and the ways you don't. So it's not like some studios, you know, almost anybody can show up to. And it's hard to get work done because there's always too many people showing up. And Patchwerk is kind of the place where you'll meet people. Like I met Jeezy for the first time here, just randomly coming up to do some business, and him and Blue were working in the room and stuff like that. And if you're the right person at the right time, you can meet them. But it's interesting because I've met a lot of people at Patchwerk, but I've never felt like I was intruding. And that person didn't feel like they couldn't work because there was always someone meeting. You know what I mean? So I think the way they've been able to manage that balance as being a maven kind of place where people can connect, but at the same time allowing that person to feel secure that they meet people when they want to meet people, and when they don't want to meet people, they don't meet anyone. So.
Some places you work, people become jealous of your growth. Well, this was a place that celebrated your growth. You know, if it was, you know, Bob, be it Kurt, be it BJ, be it Jay, you know, if it was an opportunity for you to grow, you know, they let you have that opportunity, you know. And once again, it came to a point that we were all learning together. So since we were all learning together, you know, there was an excitement for the person that developed something or went to the next level. There was an excitement to support them. You know what I mean? Because, you know, it's like a tree. You know, it was a seed planted, you know, and the tree grew and branches grew here, this branch grew here, and it formulated fruit. from those trees. And once the fruit, once you notice it was a fruit-bearing tree, it was an opportunity for us all to win.
Curtis, from the initial what we talked about in the beginning, to keep that consistent. So if somebody came here and recorded 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and they ain't been here since and they come back, they're gonna get the same experience. Just like when you go to McDonald's, you want the fries to taste the same every time. That's why you came. You come there and the Big Mac sauce is off, it's consistency. So that's what made people come here. That's what made them come back.
And if you go back to the history of Patchwerk in Atlanta, a lot of it was birthed right here, from interns going on to be executives and owning their own labels to all the big artists coming through here. So, it's like a proving ground, you know what I mean? Like, everybody comes here to get started and they branch out and end up doing great things. So
there hasn't been a time I've called Kurt, he didn't pick the phone up. There hasn't been a time that I have called Kurt and he hasn't been there for me as an artist, and that means a lot, At the end of the day, we're all humans, and Kurt treats us like that. And I think that is the reason why, besides all this stuff, is the reason why Patchwerk has lasted 20 years.
It wasn't too many people that were like Curtis that came from the streets. He ran Patchwerk, but he understood the stuff that we were going through. There were some things that happened here that would never go past these walls, and it was always about, making sure that the clients were comfortable and that this was an environment that was clean, that was dope, but still gave you a homely environment, and it still felt like you made music. You know what I'm saying? And, like I told people, there was times where I wasn't doing so well, and Curtis, he helped me. I was paying my Patchwerk bill monthly at one time, and everybody doesn't do that. So Curtis held me down, to a point where, Universal was tripping. And I was like, Curtis, I don't have that budget, homie. You know what I'm saying? And I need some help. And he never let the world know that. If I wouldn't have said it, nobody would have ever said it. But I know that Curtis is real humble, and he wants the light to be on Patchwerk, but not him. But it's really about him.
Man, Curtis, I think he does a stellar job at doing what he does, like at juggling schedules, picking the personnel, the kind of people, and I've seen some of these interns come to actually great producers, writers, some of the best. He's created some of the best talents. Actually, curated them through just giving them a place to come and work and showcase their skills.
I guess the earlier days of Patchwerk, initially it was, up the street, house location, small location, one studio, one room, downstairs at the bottom, and a couple offices, record label upstairs at the top, and I think that just in general, when I first moved to Atlanta, I literally moved to Atlanta, and this is like one of the first stops for me, so it's just kind of funny because I guess that was pretty much the foundation of my growth in Atlanta, without a doubt. A lot of people that, I met, BJ, Clay, Curtis, in Patchwerk, as well as others, I still deal with and still are friends with, and, to this day, But it was dope because at the time, there really wasn't, I guess, too many studios in the city, and there definitely wasn't many studios that was really of the culture truly. During that time, you might have had certain studios that were like rock studios, accepting some hip hop money, but they really wasn't truly of the culture, So I think that that's what was so special about Patchwerk from the beginning, for real, that it was obvious that, everyone was pretty much looked like you, and I just put that from the side of someone who came in and rented time out of the studio. They were all comfortable, and there was an atmosphere that was created that, it was a community-like atmosphere, really.
I think what has catered to Patchwerk sustainability is not operating like just a studio. One of the things that has kept me working with Patchwerk and Curtis is he always has unique ideas in terms of how to market and brand the studio. So what separates Patchwerk from everybody else in all those other studios that I called around the same time that many of them aren't even in existence anymore was just looking at the studio as a brand and not just a place where people come record music. I also feel that Curtis and Mike have implemented a certain energy here that when interns come, they know that there's an opportunity for them to get exposed to things and experiences that they normally wouldn't. So I think overall, Curtis and Mike have created a platform for a studio that will fit any Fortune 500 company. And the level of business acumen and how they run the studio is definitely what caters to why it's around today and why we're celebrating 20 years.
For them lasting 20 years, man, it's just the quality of work, just the people they have working for them, the engineers. When you come here, you just feel welcome. You never have a real problem when you come here. Everything is just cool, man. That what keeps business. You know, they for us as a record label, I know our sounds was just always perfect coming out of here, especially our singles. So that's why they around. They keep the best engineers. They keep the best interns. They keep the best everything. The cookies. They keep the best cookies. Love them.
There's qualified people that know what they're doing here. And sometimes doing music, there's a particular sound that you might be looking for. And if you're recording at home, you might not be able to get that sound because you just don't have certain equipment that's going to get you that sound. You know, even though a lot of stuff is still done in the box, me, I'm a gearhead. I love equipment, technology. The way I see a lot of the new technology, it's a gift and a curse. And Patchwerk is up to date on the newer technology, but they still keep vintage stuff around. And I still like to use vintage for certain sounds. So Patchwerk is just a place, you know, if you need a certain sound, you need some crunchiness in your vocal, you can get that. You're not gonna get that doing it at home unless you have a budget where you can put that kind of stuff in your house, you know. So, you know, it's a multi-million-dollar studio. So if there's anything that you need to achieve a certain kind of sound, you're gonna get it here.
To have a successful company, there's three things that have to be good: the people, the process, and the product. And I think with Patchwerk, all three things work very well. They always continue to keep their customers engaged and updated on the new technology and the new ways of doing things. They keep everything state of the art. They always keep people who are at the top of their field around and working in the facility, and I think that's another thing. You can always come down here. I think you can count on getting a professional atmosphere, professional work, meeting professional people in the industry. And I think this is one of the places where whether you're an artist, an industry exec, producer, or writer, you know that you can come here either for a meeting or you can come here to network. And I think it will continue to be one of the mainstays in Atlanta.
You know, Curtis has been able to do, you know, help people out with their publishing and expand the studio to 2 rooms and draw engineers and draw work internationally. You know, cats in Japan and Germany hear about Patchwerk Records, and then they come to Atlanta and they record in the studio because they're looking for a specific sound. It becomes like Motown. It becomes a factor in the manufacturing of something that they want. Just like you go to Lexus and use their engineers in order to manufacture you know, a different type of vehicle, or to get, you know, to understand it, you know, better, or because you want a specific type of sound. It became, you know, it became a brand. And I think it became a brand at the point that, you know, everybody outside of Atlanta started to really recognize when Puffy started, you know, coming to Atlanta and wanted to book Patchwerk, not just because it was here, but because it had incredible engineers and its equipment. And, you know, it was, you know, a place you could find a 9000J console, and it was a place that you could find speakers that were manufactured by these incredible engineers and designers. That's, you know, that's an accomplishment, man. Both to have the resources to get them, and then the resources to maintain them, and then the facility that's worth having them in, because it's not really worth having Klipsch speakers in Hyundai. You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's cool, but it's not like having it inside of a Lexus. So they built this Lexus, and then they put this incredible sound system in it, and they put this incredible engine in it. And then, of course, everybody wants to drive it.
Producers are producers. Engineers are engineers. Some producers try to engineer. Some engineers try to produce. here at Patchwerk, everybody is in their lane, and what they do professionally, they do it well. Engineers engineer well. Kenny, the mastering engineer, is nobody like him in the Southeast, period. Maybe one other person. He does what he does well. Mike Wilson, incredible master engineer. Ray C, amazing and just incredible engineer at what he does. And the experience that we're having here now with my artist, Desmond John, who's from South Africa, they're treating us with nothing but regal and royalty when it comes to everything that we need. They cater to us. And I love Patchwerk, man. I feel like I'm at home. Sometimes I don't even want to go back to the house.
It's grown roots from a long time ago. It's been here for a long time. Like I said, it's been almost 20 years since I first started recording here, and they've been here since then and help people along in the music. So it's just the good meeting space. It's right here in the middle of town. It's just the spot. It's the hub. It's been here the longest. That's all I can say.